Welcome again to the Relationship Reset Network group where we talk about relationships, how to be in healthy relationships, whether it's with God, self, and others. That's our goal in this community is to help others gain that knowledge through our experiences and story. And with me today, I have Savannah Grace, who is a rebirth and true love identity coach. And so, Savannah, tell us, where you're from and what is your background story when it comes to like you becoming this relationship coach that you are?
Yeah, this is something that did not happen overnight for me, Martha. This is something that I grew into. And I think that sometimes one of our best stories is how we grow into different levels of ourselves. And that's why me calling myself a rebirth on top of the true love dating coach is so important, is because there is a rebirth in us as we grow. I think it's a famous person, Tony Robbins, says, if you're not growing, you're dying. So we're constantly at this place where we're either growing or we're stagnant and we're regressing. And so for me, um, I didn't know it when I was younger, because we all don't know this when we're younger. But the different parts of our families might be more toxic than others. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't see it because you're living it. And
Hmm.
so my mother and my father had a toxic marriage, in a lot of ways. And it just blows my mind saying that out loud, because again, as a child, you don't see that, and I'm not going to go into that piece because I don't think that's healthy to share, what they've struggled with and where they've overcome and where they still are struggling with, but I can say that, the role models that were around me when it came to how a man is to love a woman was unhealthy in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it was very healthy and there was a lot of love. And my father was never abusive or anything like that, but, verbal. I could definitely say that that was definitely a problem. And he would treat her a lot like a child more than a wife, and telling her when to go to bed and things like that. And so there's a lot of control. And so when I was younger, he was my hero because he was a wildlife biologist. And the reason why, looking at it now, I can see our relationship was so dynamic is because, I was truly daddy's little girl and we had that amazing relationship. And I remember beautiful stories about going to like the barn, and finding pellets and stuff for his college, thesis and stuff, or going into the marsh with him, and wearing these big rain boots all the way up to my thighs, and putting on the hat and stuff and hiding in the cattails, and taking pictures of the snowy white egrets. And I remember, going on this trip with him and having this turtle that I wanted so bad that I saw on the side of the road, and we put him in the glove department and we fed him and stuff like that. And we had this amazing relationship as father-daughter until I was a teenager. And then my eyes started opening to this stuff, the stuff I was talking about, him treating her more like a child than a wife in ways and being more controlling. And I remember I kind of became like the bulldog. And I would be the protector, and I'd be like, you can't speak to your wife that way. And he would be like, you can't tell me what to do and stuff like that. And he was a loving man. But what happened is he hurt his back and lost his job as a watbologist. And that's, I think,
Mm,
what was happening behind the scenes. You know what I mean, Martha?
right.
And so it wasn't all just him as a horrible person. He was losing himself as a man. So he was trying to find, a way to be a man in this family again, because mom ended up being the breadwinner.
He lost his leadership, his role as a leader, and he didn't know, sound like he dealt with it the best way he knew how. Not that it was not, it was toxic, but it was actually the way he saw it.
Exactly, exactly. So when I was in as a teenager, you know, um, he was a selfish man when it came to the career. I will be honest, and this was a huge dynamic that I didn't see until later. But I was constantly moved from one school to another because we were constantly chasing his dream as a wildlife biologist. And this is before he got hurt, and so his whole thing was, we'd go to one school and I'd be doing great and I would be popular. I remember one particular season in my life. I was really popular because I was in this, Spanish town. It was called Chula Vista. And I loved it. And I was like the only redhead in the school, it seemed, and all this stuff. And I was popular with the ladies and the boys, and it was great. And then Dad pulled me out, and I was doing good in school there too. And then Dad pulled me out, and then we ended up going to Iowa. Can you imagine? And, all of a sudden, I'm like everybody else. I got picked on horribly, and,
Mm.
the verbal abuse was just outrageous. And there were all the redheads, and they all had, the white skin and the Caucasian girls. So I wasn't special anymore. And then, through the different seasons, I remember, going and I would have connections with my friends and I'd have all these really beautiful moments and stuff. And then I'd have to say bye to those friends. And I was always the new girl, always the new girl.
Oh, wow. What did it feel like to be the new girl?
Always had to prove yourself, Martha. You always had to
Mm.
prove yourself. You always had to have that, hi, I'm Savannah, how are you attitude. And I just thank God, and my God, I call him Papa God or King Jesus. And that's something that has really been my staple for who I am. Everybody has their own place of who they are, and what higher power they have, that's mine. And if it wasn't for that ability to be able to just be out there, I don't know if I could have survived, because I can make friends so easily, so easily. There's something in me that is so open to others, and my heart
Right.
is just like completely exposed. And as much as I give that love, I want that same love back. And I because of that, many times I felt like I had to prove myself being the new girl, and
Mm.
my heart was hurt many times.
How did that affect your relationships grown as you got into adulthood?
Well, I ended up having what I would call a gypsy heart, Martha. And
Explain that.
so, yes. And so, what that meant for me is that I got to a point that nothing was solid anymore. And even now, I
Mm.
can cry because I think about that moment and what that really feels like. You're constantly feeling like you're that person that is outside, looking at this amazing party going through, and everybody's having fun and they're playing and there's celebration and all that. And you are on the other side of that window looking in. And that's what it was like, because I would
Mm.
connect with these person and that person and get those relationships. And then something would happen and then we would move, and so I never got that experience of, coming back to, some kind of stability where, okay, now this is my home, this is my family, these are my friends, this is my childhood. I don't get to say that like a lot of people, like you go to mom and dad's house and you're like, this is your room, there it is. And you got
Right.
it all decked up in pink and your cute posters of all the guys you crushed on and all the cutesy stuff. I don't have that. I have that live in a suitcase mindset, and it's
Wow.
powerful what
That
that
is
means.
powerful. Now, when you say it's interesting, you said it's like looking through a window
Yeah.
that you can't, how did you put it? It's like looking through a window you can't see on the other side, or you can't be a
Yeah.
part of what's going on inside on the other side, right? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
And what was that like for you to go into relationships with that belief system?
Well, believe it
Because
or
that's
not, when I
huge.
was younger, I was very codependent and I was a chaser. And it's so funny because that's one of the things for me as a true love and dating coach. I tell my ladies, I call them queens, I call them men, kings and women queens. And I do the whole, rebirth. And I'm a little nervous right now, guys. Don't mind me. And the rebirth and the finding your own royal divine birthright. When I talk about don't chase chase your king, attract him. So it's so funny coming from the other side of it, because in my younger Savannah years, I was that chaser. Okay, so long time ago, there's this thing called rockers. It shows my age. You know, you had the ratted hair, you listen to the crazy, I love it. You listen to the crazy rock music. You know, my nickname, believe it or not, Martha, was Ozzy, as in Ozzy
That is
Osbourne.
hilarious.
You'd never imagine this. I got pictures to prove it. You know, and it was like the girls, they were called rocker itches, put the B word on there. And then with me, they called me the rocker sweetheart, because I was the one that would get sucked in to falling in love with one guy. And then my girls, they were like, you know, more floozies, to say it
You're like, what are you
nicely.
doing?
And they were like not getting heartbroken at all. They were just playing the field. And so I remember, you know, different dynamics, you know, with, you know, different guys. It was like, you know, to go deep. I didn't let a guy have, you know, a relationship with me sexually until I was 19, and the poor guy had to wear 3 condoms.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so that was me. I was like the good girl, and yet I was hanging out with the bad girls. And they had changed, you know, and stuff, and you know, in different parts of my life I became that bad girl. And I will get into that. But the part about chasing boys, that was a real thing, because I was chasing love. And what I didn't know it back then, Martha, is I was dating my father, just with different names, because
Mm.
that was the broken daddy girl in me.
Wow. This so tell the audience what that looked like in your life dating your father. Like how did that show up in your life when it came to relationships? How did you know you would realize that you were dating your father?
I didn't know that until I became a true love and date relationship coach. You know
Oh,
what I'm
okay.
saying?
You-
It was after that
After you
journey, when
did
I
the
was
work, right?
digging into myself, that's when I found it. But I remember one of the times that it started coming together for me was wow, I'm gonna just go there and share this. This is so powerful, because I know it's gonna help somebody. I left school when I was 17, and it has a lot to do with what I talked about. You know,
Right.
school environments really triggered me. I came from the old school where teachers called you slow, stupid, and didn't care. And like, I never did get to share. I actually started a band when I was in high school. It was called Black Roses, but it was mostly an excuse to talk about boys and to experience those emotions, you know, in art. And it was dark art. And if anybody would have been really paying attention to my songs, they would have saw, you know, that
Mm.
it was really a cry for help, but nobody really saw it that way. And so what happened was, is I was really crushing on this guy, and he wasn't even my guy. He was the bad boy out of the group, and he was actually college excuse me, a high school dropout. I was hanging over at my friend's house, the trailer park, and his mom was really, really lax when it came to, I gotta charge this real quick, I'm gonna continue talking, my computer, but I'll keep talking. His mom was really lax when it came to you know, the environment, and she would let us hang out there. And of course, as a teenager, you're thinking, oh cool, more freedom. So I'd go over to my friend's house, we'd spend the night, we'd sneak out in her bedroom, you know, through the window. We would go meet her boyfriend and my big crush, and he actually was, you know, the pot seller in the area, because that's when I used to smoke pot, and we would drink. And it was in that time period that one of my friends ended up connecting with him, and I was still crushing on this silly guy because my brain wasn't thinking straight. And I'm almost there with the picture
Okay.
again. Thanks for your guys' understanding. That's what we do here. Yeah. I love it. And so I remember having this conversation, and I used to watch soap operas back then. It's a hilarious part of the story. And in the soap opera, it ended up showing how this woman thought her man cheated on her, and she came up with this sneaky way of figuring out how she could find out for real. So I pulled the trick on my friend, and I said, you know, blah 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 blah, and then she confirmed it. And then instead of me taking it, and this is where the bad girl piece comes in, instead of taking it and letting it go and being like, well, he's a loser, you two deserve each other and be done with it, I was with that broken daddy girl mindset, still thinking that I'm trying to find my true love, when you're still a little girl, toxic, 17, not knowing what love is, and so I decided to fight her. And instead of doing it like a smart person would and actually doing it like at the bus stop or her place or my place and making it like whatever it needs to be over and done with, I decided to take it to the school. So that's where this whole thing got really messy really quick. So my emotions were in it. I beat her up pretty bad. I know you guys see me here, but yeah, that's the mean girl in me that kicked in. And the assistant principal literally had to pull me off of her, and I got suspended. That wasn't thrown out of school. That's just for the 3 days.
Right.
Okay, so back then I didn't know it, but the guidance counselor gets money for what she's going to tell me next. So I ended up having to go to the guidance counselor, Martha. And she told me, you know what? You're not doing good in school. You're skipping class. You're doing the drugs, with the pot. That's before it was legal,
Mhm.
and, now you're in a fight. You know what? You shouldn't do school. You know what you should do? You should do California Conservation Corps. You can fight fires. You can plant trees. You don't have to be around your dad no more. The toxic stuff you guys are going through, and you can be yourself and so she really sold it well. Come to find out, just like, recruits, in the military system, they get money to recruit you. She got money. So she was getting money to put this hard sell on me. And it didn't take much to sell me because I was already at that point,
He was
like,
already in a situation, right?
let's do it. Freedom. Are you kidding? So I get to this place called California Conservation Corps, and that's where I met my ex-abusive husband.
Mm. Wow. So you had an abusive husband and who is now no longer in your life.
Exactly.
Wow. And so what tell us about that relationship and how did you get out?
Yeah. So after that whole scene, I ended up leaving school. They said you can get your GED. They said that you can live on site. They said, you're going to go to California Conservation Corps. My mom didn't want to do it. My dad was against it, but because of how the counselor spinned it, she was like really talking good, and I was solid. I was like, no. I want to go. I want to go. Excuse me. I want to go. I want to find myself. Obviously, I don't have friends. I got stuck in thinking that like
Right.
my friends wasn't my friends. And I had some really good friends that I let go of, but back then my brain was already focused on, you know what? This is that whole, suitcase mindset again,
Mm.
leave them before they leave you kind of a thing. It's just so
Yes.
toxic, so toxic,
Wow.
and so I get there, and what they called us, and this is where it gets really twisted. And I want to do a disclaimer, you guys. California Conservation Corps is a great program for the right individual. I wasn't it. I was still that new that good girl. I was going through emotions and stuff, but I was completely sheltered. I was loved. Both my parents loved me to the ends of the earth. And now I'm going to be hanging out with kids that have been through juvie. I'm going to be hanging out with kids that have been through gangs. I'm going to be hanging out with kids that used to pimp other kids, fighters, and now that I'm in that fighting thing, they put me in that same category.
Kids
So
with no support
yeah,
and no community.
yeah, and there's more to it, and I'll get into it. And so one of the things they called us was fresh meat. Now that's a strong statement. They either called us newbies or fresh meat. So we get there and we're in like these prison buses is how I see it now, because they're the
Mm.
same color. They were white. They're white, just like the prison buses. And you get in there, and I'll tell you, I had a blast because Papa God protected me like big time because I was solid in my mindset of what I wanted. And so when all this crazy wolf stuff was going around, I was like in my own mind. And the way that my abuser found me is that I was talking to these people up on, I tippy-toed on a chair, and I was looking out the balcony, and I was talking to my people, and he thought that was so adorable. And looking at that now, Martha, I see that that was how he caught how I caught his attention, because it showed vulnerability. And when you
Right.
hear the longer story, you can see how it all comes together. But back then, he was like Mr. Superman. And so when the women were getting like, I mean, you could have got raped there. I mean, I remember at one point I got alcohol poisoning. I never got raped,
Mm.
but one of the things is because Papa God used my ex-husband to be my protector, because now I'm quote unquote taken, right? And so now no other guys are bothering me. And so when other girls are getting, you know, possibly raped, or the parties are happening that are like unwanted touches and crazy stuff is happening, I'm getting wined and dined. I'm getting,
Mm.
walking down to the gas station, getting cocoa, hanging out, it's, sunset, all this stuff, having this really true love little fantasy world. And that's what it was, Martha, a fantasy world. And the way that it finally, like, I don't know, I didn't know it then, but I see it now. The only crack in his armor was one day when I used to smoke back then. And I gave him the cigarette, he dropped it, and it went in the lake. And I laughed with him, not at him. He thought I laughed at him, and he got so nervous he like literally stumbled, almost fell into the lake, and started stuttering. And the reason why I'm bringing all that up is because that was such a big piece, because it shows me that he was trying so hard to be perfect.
Mm.
Yeah, in the courting stage, he was trying so hard to be perfect because he truly had those darker qualities that he was
Right.
hiding from me.
Right. And so in the relationship, you started to see those dark qualities. When did
Nope.
that? No, you
I
didn't.
didn't know, because that's what I'm saying. So I get the alcohol poisoning. My parents say that's enough. This party zone is not working for you, and you need to leave. And at this point, mom and dad are officially divorced. They got divorced when I was 18, I believe. And so they got a divorce, and then my dad said come back, and come with me, and all this great stuff. And I told the guy, that I loved him, and that's all he needed. And so he ended up going on a plane, surprising us, and he ended up showing up. He asked my hand in marriage, my father's hand in marriage. I can't ever say that right. And we ended up eloping with my father's blessing, and we ended up getting married in Canada.
Okay. All right. And then what happened?
Okay. And then we had the honeymoon stage, and the honeymoon stage was really beautiful, and there was real connection. And then the mask came off. And as the mask came off, a lot of things were presented to me that I wasn't prepared for. One of which I found out that he was, doing drugs. And the way that I found out was really trippy. It was already into the marriage. He's already had like his third affair at this point. I'm still trying to hold on. He's already abusive at this point. And I'm like talking to my friend, and I'm like, what is wrong with him? He's like tweaking. He's like on drugs or something. And she looks me straight in the eye, and she goes, He is. He is on drugs. He was doing them last night. I'm like, what? And come to find out, he was doing crystal meth. I only knew pot. I don't do it anymore at
Right.
this point because I stopped at 19. I got this beautiful story, which I'll come back to share because it's such a powerful story. But I already stopped it. So I wasn't doing anything. So crystal meth was way over my pay grade. I had no clue what that was. In fact, I was so naive. I heard crystal meth. I thought it was quote unquote pretty, because I'm like, what are we talking about? And we were homeless different seasons because he was not a good provider in different places. And he didn't want me to work and all the craziness that goes with that. And he had this thing that was a torch, but I thought it was because it was to, put fires and stuff when we were doing
Mhm.
barbecues. It was actually to cook his crystal meth.
And so how old were you then?
At that point now, I am 19
Oh, wow. And
because
you by 19, you have dealt with homelessness. You have dealt with abuse, physical or verbal or both.
both. Oh yeah, at one point he puts me in crutches for 2 weeks.
Wow. And so when you think back, what made you stay so long?
Yeah, that's the disgusting part. It's like now that I am a true love and a dating coach, I can see the other piece to this. But back then, it takes a woman usually 10 times to leave. I
Mhm.
left within the fifth time. And when I share my story, which I will with you guys, you can see how much it's a spiritual piece to the story and how it wasn't me because I have so many pieces that we're skipping all over. But at one point, we were in Las Vegas. Here's a great part of the story. And when we were in Las Vegas, there was a real heated fight. And this is the one where he had me up against a wall saying, I can snap your neck if I wanted to, and all that craziness. And we were called by the neighbors, the police, and he got arrested because he had an unregistered firearm. And then they sent me to the shelter because I had all these bruises. So that was good in my favor that I had the bruises. So,
Mm.
a side note for ladies, you want to show your bruises. You don't want to hide them. You don't want to put makeup on. You don't want to give the guy, excuses that you fell, any of that crap. Because if you truly love your man, you will tell on him because that's the only way he's really going to get help. And if he's not the man for you, that's how you're going to get the help. Okay, back to the story.
I'm glad you put that out there.
Yes, definitely. And so when I was in Las Vegas, that was the time I was allowed to work, because he was like, well, you know what, this is not working, me working by myself. I need you to work. I'm like, great, let's do this. And so that's when I was in JC Penney's and I was the photographer and I had this beautiful side story where my boss, she was so sweet. She always wanted me to take the and my coworkers for that matter, they wanted me to take the picture of the babies because I was the only one that could make them smile. So that's a fun little side note, right? And so she and I had a real connection, and she actually let me stay with her for a little bit. And then they took me to, like I said, they took me to the women's shelter first, and then they let me stay with her. I'm getting it mixed up. Sorry, guys. And that's when he got arrested for the register, the not
Mhm.
the gun. And so then I got to the shelter, I did the whole, intake, and then they said, is there anyone that you can stay with? And then that's when my boss, I called her and said, I can't come to work tomorrow. And she's like, why? And I said, this is it. And she goes, I've known for a while things are really not going good with you. I'm so glad that this has happened, yeah, you can stay with me. And so we did. And then on a side note, I got in touch with my uncle. Bad story there. He said yes, everything was great. And then this is a great example of not leaving when when you're not not being able to leave when you should.
Mm.
He set it up on the phone for a nanny, all this stuff. My ex is still in jail, in this time period. And then my ex, my husband at the time, he, wined and dined me saying how much he's changed. So I called my uncle back up. I say, you know what? I'm not ready to leave him. I want to stand by my man. And now
Mm.
another piece of the story, ladies. You stand by a man, you don't stand by a boy, you don't stand by an abuser. Okay, back to the story.
Amen.
And so my silly uncle didn't understand the dynamics of this. So
Mm.
he cut me off. Like, I don't need that crap, but he did. He cut me off. He was a pastor, and it really hit me hard with church hurt and the Christian
Okay.
faith and all the stuff that goes with that. And to this day, I don't call myself a Christian. I call myself a born again believer. I believe everything in the Bible. I believe God and Jesus are one. I believe
Mhm.
Jesus, was born from a virgin, all this stuff. But I will never call myself a Christian because there's too many hypocrites and it closes the door right away. And from an uncle perspective, to not accept your niece, that did a lot of damage. So I don't, I call them
A
judgmental
lot of hurt.
jollies. Yeah. And so that's part of it. It's like we all have to go down our own journey of where we are
Yes.
spiritually. And then that's where I landed is, with my faith. And so I told him I'm not ready. I'm going to stand by my man. He's my husband. I love him. And instead of him saying, okay, the door's always open, we understand. He said, you made your bed. You can lie in it. Don't ever ask me for help again. So
Hmm.
automatically that door was closed. So I
Okay.
went back to my ex, and then that's where Papa God pulls me out, because we're almost at the end of the story.
Okay. He pulls you out because
Okay.
and that's
Yeah. Yeah, so now he tells me, okay, because he sees now that I got support from my work. He sees that I have support from my boss. He sees I'm having my own money. He can see that I'm building my own system, what I call an emergency plan. He can see that it's happening. And this is another thing, ladies. When you're serious about leaving, you need to make sure you don't just tell your man you're going to leave, because if he's a true abuser, he's not going to let you. I remember, long time ago, my ex would make it so he would take my ID. He would do something weird to the car to make it so it couldn't
make it
start, or he
impossible
would.
for you to leave.
Yeah, or he take the keys. So if you're gonna do it, ladies, you got to be sneaky. You got to prepare. You gotta organize. You gotta have a friend. You gotta have your money organized. You gotta find a day that he's at work. You let him think everything's great. You love him. Maybe even have sex the night before. Seriously, you don't do anything different. So he has no clue. And then when you're ready to leave, you don't turn back. And you pack up your stuff and you leave. And that doesn't happen if you are fighting him, or if you say you're going to leave, or if you say, I have friends, or anything that's going to, you always have to cover your second hand, just like in poker.
So you have to
So,
think safety.
yep, safety first always. So back to the story. And so, he saw all that coming, and so he gave me a lie back then, and he said, we're going to go to the family again. I'm cutting so much out, Martha. It's 5 years of this, so
Oh
there's
yeah,
so
you want to,
much
yeah, you
I'm
definitely
cutting
want to
out.
show, you want to do high level version.
Yeah. And so he said, we're going to go to the family, and, so that's where we were. So that was California. And I remember this is again when I smoked, and I was at the park where now with the family. And I remember praying this prayer. I said, Papa God, take my husband. I cannot, I cannot live with him at this level anymore. I need you to, take him and you make him the man that you want to be. But I can't be here when you do it. It's too hard. I love him too much. And that was basically the end of the prayer. It was basically just like a 911 prayer. Very innocent, very quick, just
Hmm.
raw from the heart. So here's the ending that is a beautiful, beautiful start of a beginning. So I was at this point now, I'm living with my husband at his brother's house where he has his brother's wife and the kids. And at this point, his mother even stayed very codependent woman. At one point, I remember sharing with her that her son was on drugs and she didn't believe me. So there was a lot of dynamics. And he actually almost hit my face in front of her, but he hit the wall. And in the way she acknowledged it was, you don't need to do that. Don't let her get you that mad. That was her answer.
Mm.
So lots of dynamically crazy, crazy crap.
Hmm.
So I'm in the house now and I've ostracized myself and I'm in the back of the bedroom. I've already prayed that prayer that I just shared. And I'm in the bedroom and there's this huge party outside. They put the kids to sleep and they're having the party. I don't know what the mom's doing at this point, but they're having the party. And they ended up the sister, we'll call her Abby. She had a friend from school, high school, her friend, and her husband came, and they were having this conversation and visiting and stuff, and they were talking about the wife, and they wanted to meet this wife. Who's this wife that's over off to the side? So they knocked literally on the door, and I answered the door, and when they saw me, their exact words, Martha, is, we see you as a light in the tunnel. We want to take you out of here.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that was it. So God prepared my husband and the people. And so that's why I always say that I was a battered spouse that left in the middle of the night with strangers, because they were
Wow.
strangers to me,
They were strangers to you.
but not people I trusted.
Wow. And they took you away.
Oh yeah, there's more to it.
Wow, that's really pretty cool. Okay. And
Yeah.
so they took you away and to make this, you know, go back to why you coach,
Yeah.
they took you away and you was able to get out of that abusive relationship.
Yes. And so here's the thing what gets really, really exciting. And this is where like all the God stuff happened, because like I already told you that, many times I would try to leave him. At one point I tried to leave him and he broke my leg, like I said, for 2 weeks. We were actually homeless at the time,
Mhm.
and his boss, because it was through Labor Ready, he allowed us to have like a little trailer on the side,
Okay.
and I was feisty. I've always had that sassy side. I'm not always innocent. And we were talking about something, and he was gonna pull my hair, and so I need him in the family jewels, because it was a reaction. And so he flipped me over on the bed and he did some weird wrestling move and he hurt my leg, and so that's an example, and so there was many stories where, later when I looked at it, I'm like, I wasn't a battered spouse because, I fought for myself. I wasn't this little sissy. But ladies, going back to the story, if a man puts his hand on you, you're abused. And if you
Yes.
put your hand on a man, you're abuser. And so that needs to be established. And so one of the things is when they said you're a light in the dark tunnel, we want to take you away from here. The lady and the husband, her husband and them, they were from a different state, and so they had plane tickets round trip. And so what was crazy is the woman's dad gave her a car. It was already planned ahead of time. It wasn't before this happened. And
Hmm.
so the husband ended up being able to drive my stuff to a different state, and I was able to take her husband's ticket. So that was a gift.
Wow. That was God.
God. All God. And so you were asking about why I didn't leave sooner. I wasn't ready. And every time that I would like think I would be ready, I would get sucked back into that, and that was that whole crazy making. And there's a real word
Mm.
for that, when you're
Wow.
in
A lot of
rebellion.
women probably feel that way. They're not ready. And so how do you help women when they feel like they're not ready?
Now that I'm on the other side of it, I remember, a time when I had a really good friend and we were literally getting chased by her ex abusive husband. I met her at church choir,
Mhm.
and we were getting chased by her husband because he was in jail, and I guess he came out of jail early, and she had a son, and her son was like, my dad, he's behind us, and he was waving to his dad thinking it was all normal, and she's like, we got to get out of here. And so literally I did this weird thing where we were all in the car and I just drove through the light, so it was like a yellow light, and just before it hit yellow it would go red. So I was just like this race car driver this day. It was so crazy. And I ended up driving her, her to the police station, and we got it all figured out. But it was like things like that. It's like I've always had this ability with emergencies to like think
And
on the
step
spot.
in.
Yeah, totally. I remember when I was a nursing assistant for a season, and one of the residents pulled their catheter out, and it was bleeding and everywhere. And my coworkers were freaking out, and I was calm as glass. And I literally went to the head nurse and I said what was happening. And she said, okay, come with me. And so I was talking to the family as she was taking care of the problem. So I got story after story of how, I'm able to like think on my feet like that. And so all those things kind of were always in there, Martha. But because of the abuse and the trauma and the broken daddy girl stuff, they were underground. And so
Right.
my rebirth started when I was rescued. I literally was grabbed out of that. and I was rescued. And that was when my rebirth from broken daddy girl to next level queen was born.
Wow. And now you help other people in the area of their rebirth, true love, and identity.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm so glad that you overcame that because a lot of people overcome it in different ways. Either they don't survive it or they don't come out. They come out with very, very traumatic abuse visually, actually. And so it's good that you survived that and someone came and took you out because sometimes people don't know what to do in those situations, right? And so what would be your advice to someone who notices someone else that's being abused?
The biggest thing is for them not to try to talk to both partners. Because a lot of times we as people, we think, oh, well, we're going to talk to the abuser as well as the abusee and see if we can't get in there and help them. Again, that goes back to, if you truly know that someone's being hurt, you do not want to let the abuser know that they have any other support. Because one of the keys to this whole thing is the abuser. If they're a true abuser, they want to isolate you, Martha.
Right. That's true. That's true. That's the
And
key thing that I want people to isolation is huge in that dynamic.
yes, yes. And they'll go so far as to make you lose your job. I dealt with that with my ex. They'll mess with your car,
Oh, your family, moving you
your
away from your family is a
family.
big key, taking you away from your support system. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
so
it's like
it's
pillars. It's like pillars. They know that you have these pillars and they'll just one by one, they'll
one
say,
by one, tear them
work on
down
your relation. Yep.
where they're the only pillar left.
Yeah.
Wow.
So your question was, what you would do. I would talk to that person one on one,
Hmm.
and I would come to them in a very gentle way. And I would say, I see. And don't say another word after that. Just say, I see, and see how they respond to that word.
What
And
would be the response that you would like back
I would
off or
like for them to say, you do? Be
and if
like, yeah,
they
I
if
see.
they reactive to it, how would you that means they're not ready.
If they, yeah, exactly. Now you're, yeah, exactly. So it's a nice way because, like I said before, it takes a woman, usually a man, woman, whatever, it takes them about 10 times before they leave before
Oof.
they're willing to leave. And like I said, mine was 5, and, it was a real gift. Papa God literally pulled me out. But when you say, I see, what that shows them is you're seeing their hidden world. You're seeing the
Yes.
bruises they're hiding. You're seeing the lies, the shame, the blame, the games, the mind screwing, all the stuff that shows just by the words I see. And how they respond to that word shows them that you're safe. And that
Mm,
you're not going to be another one of those judgmental jollies that's going to be like, oh, well, you know what? You probably started it. Or you know what? I helped you last time. I'm not helping you again. Or you know what? You know, there's probably another side of this that you just don't understand. He's probably just been hurt and you need to be more submissive or whatever their thing is. When you say, I
right.
see, you show them that you're in their court and that you'll fight for them and that you're there.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, I really thank you for talking about that because it's really a story that people don't like to tell, right? But it's needed because people, women and men are going through abuse, believe it or not, men too,
Oh, yeah.
that they don't want to talk about. And it's something that if you see that, you know, be that support because they're afraid to leave. Their life is at risk if they leave the
Yes.
wrong way. And
Yes.
so it's best to leave, leave when you can, leave when you have an opportunity, and be if they have someone that they feel support, it sounds like they're open to leave quicker.
Exactly.
Okay. And so I really truly thank you for sharing that. So tell the audience if they want to, you know, um seek out help to help coach them through those dark areas of their lives, how can they reach you?
Okay, so this is where it's really special. I'm at a place that I want to do something that's really special. I want to do a donation only. And I want to, get ladies that truly need that connection and need that love and that support, and all I ask is for a testimonial at the end of this. If it's an area that is so deep and scary that we need to talk about legal stuff that might be over my head, I will definitely, send them somewhere else. But if they're at a point that they're, ready to leave, and they have a game plan of what they want to do and stuff, I want to help them build them back after that. There's a lot of dynamics to this. It's so much liberation when you get to the other side of it. And I don't want them to think that they have to have that tag that they are a broken daddy girl or a princess mindset or need a man to save them. I want them to know that they truly are that queen, and not only can they save themselves, but they don't need that tag as an abused person anymore. They can be healed.
Okay. Well, I will have your information. You will put your information in the comments so
Oh
that
yeah,
people can reach out to you for coaching and
yeah.
get
So it's yeah.
and
As
so
far
that
as
they
that
can get the
goes,
healing that they need. And so she's available. She's passionate about what she's doing. She loves people. I know that about her because she's a friend of mine. And she loves people. She loves to see people transformed. And so reach out to Savannah. And if you feel unseen, she's a great person for that as well. So reach out to her so that you can get the help you need. We do not want you to suffer in silence. So thank you so much for coming on and being with us. And thank you, those who are listening. Thank you so much for chiming in and listening and commenting. We really appreciate you.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, you guys. And if you can't get a hold of me on Savannah Grace, just put a message and I'll reach out to you on my Diamond account.
Okay.